So this video is on decubitus ulcers, also known as pressure ulcers or bed sores, um, trophic ulcers. Bed sores is the term that you'll hear the most often, and what it's caused by an unrelieved pressure resulting in damage to underlying tissue, usually over some sort of a bony prominence. So what happens is that the bone, pressure on the tissue over the bone, compresses capillaries and you get inadequate blood flow to the skin, and then the skin dies and ulcerates. It opens up. Um, so the bony prominences really are things like your heels, the sacrum, ischial tuberosities, the greater trochanters, elbows, uh, scapula, um, and it's got to be prolonged uh, pressure. So it normally happens to elderly, underweight, non-ambulatory, and incontinent people. But any immobility, so sitting in a wheelchair continuously, can lead to pressure ulcers on the ischial tuberosity. So uh, lots of people in nursing homes get them. Uh, People with diabetes get them in their feet. So these things, like I said, are caused by squeezing the capillaries. So the damage happens from deep up to the skin. So the damage that happens first uh, near the bone, um, and it may not get visible right away. Um, so we stage these things on page 233 of your textbook. Table 7.5 is a grading classification um, of these ulcers. So grade 0 is a pre-ulcerative lesion. So this uh, is um, before it's actually happened. Grade 1s are superficial ulcers without too much subcutaneous tissue involvement. Uh, Grade 2, penetration through to maybe expose the bone. Stage 3, you end up with problems actually in the bone where we get an osteomyelitis or abscess is actually in the bone. Stage 4 is when gangrene sets in and in a digit, and stage 5 is gangrene that requires the amputation of a foot. Um, so these things can go quite far. So there are various risk factors involved here, like where you're going to get these pressure ulcers. So it's some sort of unrelieved pressure that results in damaged skin and muscle and underlying tissue over the bony prominences. So there's a couple of causative factors. One is this pressure, this external pressure from from staying in one position too long. People in comas, for instance, may get them where their scapula touch the bed, uh, where their trochanters touch the bed, that kind of thing. Um, Another thing can be friction, so rubbing the skin against another surface. So this would be like blisters from ill-fitting shoes. Uh, that sort of thing. And if there are other problems like diabetic problems, etc., this can end up resulting in an ulcer. Shearing forces, when two layers slide against each other in opposite direction. So this would be friction sort of things, but not against the shoe, but with where the skin is being pulled one way and the tissue is being pulled in another. Um, there's something called maceration, which is softening of the tissue caused by excessive moisture. Uh, you think of this as, sitting too long in a bath, you get a certain amount of maceration. But the problem here is actually people who are incontinent and in a diaper, and that excessive moisture actually damages the skin or makes the skin more susceptible to damage because the skin softens. That the urine literally causes the stratum corneum to be less um, resistant. Um, Dehydration can do it too, because if the skin's not plump and it's more prone to cracking and problems like that, it's going to have less um, nutrients to it and that kind of thing. General malnutrition will add to that, and again, the tissue is not that healthy. And the last is decreased or poor circulation. Happens from diabetes, happens from smoking, those kinds of things. Liver disease can lead to decreased circulation, especially in the capillaries. Low blood pressure, again, dehydration, those sorts of things can all lead to decreased circulation. So when you think about it, how many elderly, incontinent people sitting in a Depends that are not aware of what's going on uh, are there at old age homes? They're malnourished. They may not be adequately hydrated, et cetera, et cetera. Like they would have all of these factors, so they're very prone to this. Uh, a, a little tangent and aside about dehydration. There's a problem happens in institutions, at hospitals and nursing homes, in that uh, with elderly and people that are not really with it. Um, One of the things that happens is a nurse will come in and say, "Oh, Mrs. Smith, you must be thirsty. Let me get you a glass of water." So she'll go get a glass of water and give it, and the woman will take a sip or two out of the water and put it down. An hour, and the nurse will chart as having had a glass of water. An hour later, or 2 hours later, somebody else comes in the room and says, "Oh, that water is warm. Let me get you another glass of water." So they dump it out and they get another glass of water, and she takes two more sips of that, and it's charted that she's had another glass of water, etc., etc. So it looks like she's maybe had 3, 4, 6 glasses of water in the course of a day, and really she's only had 6 sips. Um, it's a very real problem. Um, so so these are the extrinsic factors that can lead to the pressure ulcers. There's also intrinsic factors. So it would be things like decreased sensation. So if somebody's neurologically impaired and they can't feel, then they don't notice that an ulcer is starting, and so it may not get attended to. They won't complain about it. Um, so impaired mobility, impaired activity levels. Just sometimes people, they are mobile, but they choose not to be. They just sit too long. Um, so excessive sweating can do it. It can cause that maceration. Um, Altered levels of consciousness. People that are in comas can't shift. They don't know. So those things all add up to this problem of decubitus ulcers. This is a picture of one. What happens here is that the center doesn't heal in here. The skin heals and kind of turns back on itself around here, and the center stays open, uh, and will probably leak fluid and be a portal of entry for pathogens. So the skin gets cold. There's a loss of temperature because there's loss of blood supply. They it, you get inflammation happening, pain and itching. At this point, uh, you shift them and maybe stimulate more blood flow to the area, and it's reversible. If they start to turn purple, they get necrosis. Uh, then they don't heal very well. I took my wife's grandmother-in-law. I used to regularly take her to dermatologists and different doctor's appointments that she had. And a plastic surgeon one time said to me, and I thought it was a great quote, um, it's hard to grow grass if there's no sprinkler system. Uh, what he was saying is that it's hard to grow skin cells when there's no vascularization to that skin. Um, in her case, it was diabetes and smoking. Both of them lead to peripheral vascular damage, and makes them prone to these pressure ulcers and to non-healing lesions of the skin. So what do they do with them? You want to put antibiotics in them and dressings to keep them covered up and stop to be a portal of entry. They tend to debride and do skin grafts uh, to try and cause them to heal over. But there's a big problem with the skin grafts taking, because the conditions, unless the conditions that caused the original pressure ulcer are addressed, then it's kind of pointless. You'll just end up with one in the same spot. You want to limit the risk of infection. Gangrene is a big problem with this. So if you're catching these things early in that early stage where you just have local reddening and itching and pain, then massage is actually good for it. It will stimulate the flow of blood. But if the skin itself is compromised, if the ulcer has started and it has started to ulcerate, then really massage is contraindicated.